The night rain had retreated in silence, leaving streaks of water sliding down the massive glass walls of Crosstech Global, as if Manhattan had just been cleansed in a cold rinse. The sun had yet to rise. Pale yellow light from street lamps shimmered on the wet pavement, creating a metallic gleam, like wet steel under a flashlight. Floor 41, System Coordination Center, remained silent, as always at this hour. No footsteps, no voices. Only the pale white glow of recessed LED lights and the endless stream of numbers flowing across hundreds of screens lined along the curved glass wall. Nathaniel Cross entered without a sound, but the air changed the moment the security door sealed shut behind him. His suit, custom-made in Italy, was darker than the pre-dawn sky. Only the deep blue tie held in place by a gold pin stood out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp, cold features, like someone had carved him from marble. Every step he took echoed softly on the marble floor, reflecting his lean frame, like a ghost who commanded the entire city. In his hand was a black leather briefcase with dual combination locks. Inside, a $380 million technology transfer contract with the Department of Defense won that could elevate Crosstech into a strategic government contractor. Everything had been arranged. The legal team was waiting on the 50th floor. Security advisors were online in the virtual meeting suite, and the press had been hinting for 2 weeks. Broadcast starts at exactly 7 o'clock, not a minute late, his assistant had reminded him. 6:23 a.m. He glanced at his Patek Philippe watch. 7 minutes early, as always. Precision was his spine, and the reason no one dared to breathe off rhythm when working with him. "System status?" he asked without looking at anyone. A young red-headed engineer stood up nervously. "Stable, sir. Third-layer encryption has been tested. Backup channels are on standby." "Access the sandbox simulation. I want to test the international trading system before the live deployment." "Yes, sir." The main screen lit up. Thousands of lines of code flowed like silver streams. The clatter of keyboards filled the room. No one dared to lift their heads. Nathaniel's icy gaze could strip away mistakes in a single blink. "Scale automopatare. Countdown 60 seconds to final security checkpoint," announced the AI system. Nathaniel stepped back half a pace, his hand resting on the briefcase. Everything was in place. Then, a piercing beep sliced through the air. Then another. Then a shrill cascade of alarms erupted. Across every screen, blood-red text began to flash. "System failure, encryption override. Unauthorized access detected. Client data compromised." Everything exploded in a second. "Cut all external connections," someone yelled. "AI is locked. I don't have override access. Access codes wiped. We can't authenticate top-tier clearance." Numbers scrambled. Graphs collapsed. Customer images, market data, internal documents flashed across the screens like a shattered matrix. "No, no!" One engineer slammed the desk. "I can't control the source code chain." Nathaniel said nothing. He stepped to the central console. For a fleeting moment, his eyes were no longer those of a cold businessman, but of a man who had just watched the empire he built begin to crumble in 40 seconds. 6:30 a.m. A muffled thump behind the glass door. The clattering sound of a metal cart rolled in. The faint scent of cleaning chemicals mingled with the ozone burn of an overheating system. A woman appeared at the edge of the control room. She wore a faded Navy janitor's uniform. Her hair was neatly tied back. Her old sneakers squeaked softly against the polished floor. One hand pushed the mop bucket, the other held a small USB drive. She stopped, looked at the main screen, looked at the people panicking. An engineer shouted, "Don't come in! This is a restricted zone!" She lifted her gaze, voice calm and steady. "Sorry, but I think I know how to stop it." Nathaniel spun around. "Who are you?" She didn't answer. She walked straight to the auxiliary server array, the backup system no one had touched in 6 months. "I just need 3 minutes and one working USB port." "Are you insane?" the red-headed engineer whispered. "No one has clearance to core backup except—" "I know." She plugged in the USB and started typing. Her fingers danced over the keyboard like a ballerina. No glancing at keys, no hesitation. Lines of handwritten code, old-school syntax, not AI, appeared on the screen. Manual programming, a language most in this building had long forgotten. Each keystroke landed like a heartbeat in the tense silence. "What are you doing?" Nathaniel stepped closer. "You know this system?" Evelyn didn't look up. "I used to know the one who wrote it." 1 minute passed. 2, 3. The main screen went black. The room held its breath. Then in a soft blue glow, the auxiliary system came online. A single ding, light as a temple bell in the aftermath of war. Text appeared, "Relay backup online, temporary control enabled." The room erupted. "We didn't lose the data. Clients are coming back online. We can still run the meeting." Nathaniel said nothing. He stared at her. The woman stood still, quietly removing the USB, wiping her hands with a cloth, then placing her mop back into the bucket. "You," he swallowed hard. "You, who are you?" She looked at him for the first time. No coldness, no pride, just a gaze light as breath. "I'm the janitor, but I'm also the one who once kept the system from falling apart." She wheeled the cart away. Her old sneakers squeaked gently across the glossy floor. The faint scent of cleaner lingered. Nathaniel stood there, surrounded by reborn data and a question that would not leave his mind. Who are you? You're watching Soul Stories, where every story whispers of love, healing, and hope. Let us know which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and be a part of our journey. Now, stay with us. The story is just beginning. The system had stabilized. The main interface returned with its familiar blue background, functional icons glowing as if the near-catastrophic crash had never happened. But inside the cold control room, no one smiled, no one moved. And more importantly, no one could take their eyes off the woman who had just saved the entire system with a USB stick and a faded janitor's uniform. Evelyn walked out quietly as if nothing significant had occurred. She didn't lift her head. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't ask for credit. The squeaky wheels of her cleaning cart echoed down the long hallway, leaving behind stunned stares, confused whispers, and one man frozen in place among the glowing screens, Nathaniel Cross. No one dared stop her. No one even remembered her name, except one sentence lingered in every mind like an echo. "I mop floors, but I also see what others overlook." On the top floor, in the executive boardroom, the air in the room was like a pressurized chamber on the brink of explosion. The legal team combed through the Department of Defense contract. The PR director continuously updated press response drafts, and Nathaniel sat in silence. He sat at the head of the table, his gaze locked on the touch panel but his hands unmoving. The muscles in his face were taut, like a violin string stretched too tight. "Mr. Cross, everything's back in order. The media has no idea. We've told internal shareholders it was a scheduled test run," the head of strategy reported, trying to keep his voice calm. "What about the woman?" Nathaniel's voice was low, steady, cold. Silence swept across the room. "Do you mean a support engineer from cybersecurity?" "She's not an engineer. She's not on the official staff list. She has no access credentials. No one in that room knew who she was," Nathaniel replied, eyes still on the display. Everyone looked around, then down. No one had an answer. Downstairs, in the dim-lit tech sub-levels, Evelyn pulled open the heavy steel door to the old server room, a place rarely visited since the new infrastructure went live. The overhead light flickered weakly. Dust coated the racks like remnants of a long-buried civilization. She pulled a small SSD drive from her coat pocket. Gloved hands moved with swift precision. The blue light of her portable monitor lit up her face, a face sharp, quiet, and now filled not with the cold calm of a technician, but a searching gaze as if trying to recover something from the past. She inserted the drive. A soft click. The screen powered up. Evelyn typed in a line of code etched deep in her memory, an outdated credential no one had used in over a year. Root G Quinn mirror, dasher execute, read-only, the code ran, a folder open. 01-beta test-firewall-, authored by G Quinn, Gavin Quinn. His name appeared like a wound that had never healed. Her brother, the one who vanished after last year's crash, branded a traitor, erased from the system, smeared across headlines. No one searched for him. No one asked. No one remembered, except Evelyn. She hadn't joined Crosstech to mop floors. She was here to trace the last breadcrumb Gavin left behind, before it disappeared forever. Top floor, CEO's office. Nathaniel stood alone before the floor-to-ceiling glass, gazing at the fading skyline. Towers bathed in electric light melted into the pale gray dawn, their reflections caught in his eyes like a cold, inescapable maze. He remembered. The gloved hands, the calm walk, the voice as light as if none of it mattered yet. She had navigated the backup system manually, typing commands like someone who had designed them. No one accesses the core backup without leaving a trace, he said aloud. Yet that woman had left none. No code logs, no IP traces, no authentication signature. He picked up the phone, calling the head of security directly. Send me all personnel files on a janitor named Evelyn who worked this morning. Full movement logs, keycard data, and any security cam footage still retrievable. Evelyn just transferred in from the Midtown branch a few weeks ago. Her file's pretty basic. No internal ID, she's with a third-party cleaning contractor. Nathaniel's brow furrowed. No one cleans the server floor this early in the morning. She might have gone to the wrong floor. No, he cut in. Send me everything, now. Back downstairs among the buried files. Evelyn opened the next file, 03 breach warning audio note. She plugged in a set of earbuds, closed her eyes for a beat, then pressed play. Gavin's voice filled her ears, hoarse, urgent, but still with that familiar, teasing undertone. If you're hearing this, it means I ran out of time. Someone inside is using my credentials to open an external breach. I locked down the copies, but they'll frame me. Evelyn, don't trust anyone, especially the one on the top floor. A shaky breath. If you make it here, use the code MirrorEve42. That'll unlock the rest, and you'll see. Not every system is as trustworthy as it promises. Evelyn removed the earbuds and bit her lip lightly. She didn't cry. It had been far too long for tears, but her heart beat in a rhythm all its own, as if whispering that Gavin was still alive, inside these lines of code. She saved the code, pulled the drive, closed the laptop and slid it into her coat. Outside, footsteps echoed firm, unmistakable. Nathaniel was getting closer. Evelyn turned and walked toward the side exit, not hurried, not afraid. But in her eyes now, there was nothing of a janitor left. The tech sublevels lay buried deep within the building, forgotten and maze-like, bathed in dim yellow light with air vents creaking softly under slow gusts. No one came down here without a reason, and Evelyn always had one. She sat cross-legged in front of a rust-edged test terminal, fingers gliding effortlessly across the keyboard. The server screen lit up slowly, like an old beast reluctantly waking. The code crawled but struck true, each line unlocking a path into the internal monitoring system, an area no one would imagine a janitor could access. On screen, layers of code overlapped like a labyrinth. Most were just backups, old patch files, maintenance logs. But then tucked away beneath 3 layers of decoy code and 2 redirect chains, Evelyn stopped. An unnamed file, strange format, and a hash signature that only appeared if the creator held executive-level admin access. She sat upright. This can't be a coincidence, she muttered, her gaze sharp, focused like a mathematician facing an unsolvable equation. She tried to open it. The system rejected her. Access denied, executive level only. She wasn't surprised, but Evelyn had once cracked a Swiss bank security system not for profit, but to stop the largest money laundering scheme in Europe from being pinned on her brother. Since then, no code had ever made her hesitate. She began writing a custom override sequence. The protection layer was thick, running on real-time adaptive algorithms, a technique known only to elite CTOs or the core system architects. This isn't just secure. Someone went out of their way to bury this, she whispered. 20 minutes later, a message appeared. Unfold key accepted, file decrypted. The screen blinked, then revealed a sequence of .log documents. Evelyn reached for her earbuds just in case audio played, but none came. Only a quiet stream of system logs, time-stamped by access events opens, copies, overwrites. User THALE, access level, COO-level. She froze. Travis Hale, Crosstech's chief operating officer, the man once featured on the cover of Forbes with Nathaniel, the man who once said at a tech summit, "We don't just build secure systems, we build trust." Evelyn took a slow breath, not from shock, but from the cold fury swelling in her chest. The logs showed Travis had accessed Gavin's original firewall files right when the crash occurred last year. Even worse, he had issued delete commands on the original cache and rerouted the error code to G. Quinn's user ID. She closed her eyes, steadying her hands. They framed my brother, and it was the CEO's best friend. A hidden note popped up, handwritten code, deeply embedded, not part of any official logs, no timestamp, almost impossible to find unless one knew exactly where to look. Its message was simple. Error embedded. No one will know. No witnesses needed. Evelyn's chest tightened. She knew the type of person who would leave a line like that. Someone smart enough to create a disaster and cold enough to blame someone else. Someone with time, power, and ruthlessness enough to turn a deliberate act into a perfect trap. And the victim none other than Gavin. She clenched her fists not just from anger, but from that all-too-familiar pain returning like a crashing tide. "They thought no one would ever know," she whispered. "But I've seen it now." This wasn't Gavin's failure. It was a conspiracy. She closed the file, encrypted it again, and erased every trace. Fingers shaking just slightly, she pulled out the USB eyes still fixed on the screen, as if trying to contain the storm rising inside her. Something inside her cracked quietly, almost imperceptibly, but deeply. Evelyn stood, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. She didn't cry. She hadn't since Gavin vanished. But in that moment, if anyone had stood near her, they would have felt it too, that something in the air had shifted. As if the janitor had just shed the last of her disguise. Across the building, in the CEO's office, Nathaniel was replaying the surveillance footage from that morning's incident. That woman, Evelyn, had walked into chaos without panic, without clearance. Just a USB in her hand, one calm sentence, and then she saved the system. He zoomed in on her face as she inserted the drive into the auxiliary terminal. It wasn't recklessness, it wasn't luck. It was someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Who are you?" he murmured, but not with suspicion anymore. It was the dawning realization. She didn't come here to mop floors. Back in the sub-levels, Evelyn slid the USB back into her coat. A plan was forming in her mind, clear and sharp, like sunlight piercing through the steel mesh above her. She couldn't expose the evidence yet. Travis had power, guards, media in his pocket, but she had what he didn't, the truth, and the resolve of someone with nothing left to lose. She pushed open the steel door. A gust of cold air from the vents swept over her. Outside, the world kept turning, unaware that something beneath its foundation had just been revealed. But in the basement depths of Crosstech, a woman now knew exactly who had destroyed her brother's career, and maybe his life. Inside the executive office, Nathaniel stood before the touchscreen wall, eyes fixed on a document that had just arrived in his encrypted inbox. No sender, no greeting, just one attachment, a system access log dating back to just before the crash 1 year ago. And at the bottom of the record, one line made his brow crease. Travis Hale, executive access credentials, logged into Gavin Quinn's directory. That couldn't be right. Travis had told him, clearly and repeatedly, that he had never touched the old firewall system, that all the errors had been Gavin's. So why did the logs say otherwise? Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, eyes closing for a second. Gavin had once been one of the most talented engineers, and also Travis's best friend. Something was starting to fall out of line in the sublevels, where the light was as faint as buried memories. Travis Hale moved briskly through the corridor leading to the old data archive. His designer dress shirt, now slightly wrinkled from sweat, clung to his back, though his eyes remained sharp, cold. In his hand, a personal tablet. He tapped into the auxiliary control panel. Just delete this log, rewrite a clean version. No one will ever know, he muttered as he entered his admin key. His hand trembled just a little, but Evelyn, standing behind a row of dust-covered server racks, saw it clearly. She had been watching quietly, hidden behind the weighty metal cabinets long abandoned by time. Her heart raced, but her eyes were as precise as a scalpel. She didn't need any more proof. Travis was erasing evidence, and he knew exactly what he was doing. Evelyn withdrew silently before he could spot her. She already had the original extraction. Now she only needed one person to believe it, someone with the power to change everything. In the CEO's office, Nathaniel reread the anonymous log again. Something inside him was shifting a small crack in the trust he'd long placed in his co-founder, now slipping away like sand through his fingers. He couldn't trust an anonymous file, but he also couldn't unsee what he'd just seen. He picked up the phone and dialed Travis's private line. "You once told me you never accessed Gavin's firewall. I want to ask again. Are you sure?" A long pause on the other end. Then Travis replied, his voice smooth as always. "Of course. You know me, Nathaniel. Is something wrong?" "Just some old data resurfaced. I'll have it checked." "Yeah, go ahead." Nathaniel didn't say another word before hanging up, but his fingers tapped lightly on the desk, his gaze already different. Later, in the sub-levels, Evelyn returned, same faded uniform, same cleaning cart. But this time, she didn't sneak. She stepped into the server room with quiet confidence, like someone who expected to be caught. And sure enough, just as she inserted the USB into the test terminal, a familiar voice rang out from behind. "You're not allowed to be here." Evelyn turned. Nathaniel stood only a few steps away, hands in the pockets of his tailored trousers, eyes sharp as ice. But this time his gaze didn't carry the sterile detachment of a CEO enforcing protocol it carried pointed suspicion. "You know this floor isn't open to janitorial staff," he said. Evelyn didn't flinch. "I just mop the floors. But sometimes the one who mops them sees who's really making the mess." Nathaniel narrowed his eyes. "What is that supposed to mean?" She shrugged. "That's up to you." He stepped closer. "I don't believe you're just a janitor." "Then stop believing," she said with a faint smile. "Check the system logs. See for yourself." She removed the USB, leaving nothing behind, and wheeled her cart away, leaving Nathaniel alone, surrounded by thousands of files and a doubt now planted deeply in his mind. On her way back to maintenance, Evelyn walked the long corridor under flickering lights. Outside, the city was beginning to wake under a hazy gray dawn. She stopped before a fogged pane of glass, catching her own reflection, sharp eyes, hair tousled under her cap, and a smile no one could see. She didn't need Nathaniel to believe her today. She only needed to plant a seed of doubt, and she knew this much for certain: when trust begins to fracture, all masks eventually fall. The lights in Nathaniel's office were dimmer than usual. No one remained on the executive floor except him and the layers of data now unfolding across the giant touch display, each line peeling back what felt like a buried memory. File 1. Evelyn Monroe, formerly a senior cybersecurity specialist recruited directly through an MIT-linked scholarship program. File 2. A formal notice stating she had withdrawn from the project following last year's major crash. No reason given, no internal memos, just a single line: voluntarily resigned, investigation discontinued. It didn't add up. According to a recovered backup system log Nathaniel had just decrypted, Evelyn had never submitted a resignation. Her name had been erased, her credentials revoked, all done without protocol. Someone wanted her gone. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair. Scattered puzzle pieces were finally forming a picture. She wasn't just a janitor. She had once been a pillar of this company's foundation, and someone had tried to bury her like she had never existed at all. Later, in the tech sublevels, Nathaniel didn't announce himself. He pushed open the heavy door into the dim space filled with dust, cables, and old server hums. No frantic keystrokes, no alarms. Just Evelyn sitting beside a rusted machine cabinet, gently brushing dust from a cooling fan with a tiny brush. She didn't flinch when she saw him. "You found it, didn't you?" she said, not looking up. "You used to work here," Nathaniel said calmly. You helped build Crosstech's first firewall, so why are you mopping floors now? She blew the dust off a fan blade. Because not everyone gets the right to fix what they didn't break. You were erased from the system. You didn't resign. Who did it? Evelyn stood. The ceiling light struck her face, an unremarkable face, if one didn't look closely at her eyes. Sharp, clear, and beneath them, something deeper, a loss that had never been named. Do you know what's worse than being betrayed by someone you trust? She asked softly, but with razor precision. It's when people think they're doing the right thing while helping the wrong one. Nathaniel met her gaze directly. Are you talking about me? She didn't answer right away. Then she stepped closer, stopping just a few feet from him. I didn't come to pull you into this. I don't need your trust, Nathaniel. I only need to find my brother. Gavin? She nodded. He wasn't a traitor. He didn't disappear by choice. And I'm not leaving until I see the truth for myself. Silence fell. No accusations, no arguments. Just two people standing across from one another, surrounded by outdated servers and unspoken wounds. Nathaniel's fist clenched slightly. He dismantled corporate giants with a single code breach. He trusted numbers, structure, irrefutable evidence. But right now, he stood before someone who had nothing left but blood-deep belief and a resolve no deletion could wipe away. Aren't you afraid? He asked quietly. What if I'm part of the reason your brother disappeared? She let out a soft, wry laugh. If you were, I wouldn't still be standing here. Another beat of silence. Then she turned. And if you don't believe me, that's fine too, because I didn't come here to be believed. I came here to see. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. The tech sublevel was cloaked in pale fluorescent light. No sound but the faint hiss of air through the vents. Nathaniel leaned against a power cabinet, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the woman standing before him. You say Gavin was set up, he said slowly. I'm not ready to believe that completely, but I can't ignore it anymore either. Evelyn didn't nod. She didn't argue. She simply stood in silence. He continued, You have 24 hours. If you can prove that Travis was the one who sold the data, I'll take it to the board myself. And if I can't, she asked, then I'll have to report you to security for unauthorized access by someone who was officially erased from the system. The air from the vents felt colder somehow, but Evelyn didn't flinch. She stepped toward the old control console, plugged her USB into the back port. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with precision. Lines of code appeared like a language once etched into her bones, now stirred back to life. Then let's see if you're ready to face the truth, she said softly. In the core data archive, where nothing is ever truly gone. Crosstech's mainframe was designed like a labyrinth layered security, overlapping encryption. But Evelyn wasn't trying to brute force through. She was looking for a shortcut, one that only someone who thought like Gavin would recognize. He wasn't good at chess, she whispered to herself, but he was brilliant at hiding his pieces, so he wouldn't have left anything in the obvious directories. Nathaniel sat beside her, watching her hands move. What are you looking for? Proof that Travis accessed a shadow encryption channel, the kind only the system's original architect would know about. After a few minutes, a hidden directory appeared, nearly invisible, marked only with a tiny cryptic signature, G_Q/hidden. Evelyn opened it. Inside, a short audio file. Gavin's voice faint, low, but unmistakable. If you're hearing this, know that I didn't betray anyone. I discovered that Travis Hale sold our security algorithm to a Swiss firm funneled through virtual wallets, but traceable if you know the account. I locked the backups, but if I go missing, it means I wasn't allowed to speak. Evelyn leaned back, eyes closing briefly, like surfacing from a long dive into memory. Nathaniel, on the other hand, sat up straight, his hand clenched. It's real. Yes, she replied, and now you have a choice. Hours later, in the locked sublevel room, they were still there, reviewing files, analyzing evidence. Few words were spoken, but their exchanged glances said enough this night was no longer just about protocol. Nathaniel handed her a water bottle, and their fingers brushed. Just a moment, but long enough for his expression to shift. "You've done all this for your brother," he said. Evelyn nodded softly, because he didn't get the chance to defend himself. "And what about you? Who's protecting you?" Silence. No one had ever asked her that. A draft from under the door fluttered an old sheet of printed logs on the desk. The lights flickered slightly. The room seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn turned to reach for the circuit board, but Nathaniel caught her wrist. She startled not from fear, but from the look in his eyes. For the first time, it wasn't the gaze of a man asking questions. It was the gaze of someone trying to believe. "Don't think I don't know what it feels like," he said, voice low. "To be doubted by the board, to be betrayed by a friend right before promotion. But I've never seen anyone do what you've done, risk everything to prove someone else wasn't wrong." Their breath met between them, not because they leaned in, but because the space between had slowly disappeared. Over hours of tension, data, anger, and silence. And then the kiss came, unannounced. Not passionate, not cinematic, just a quiet touch, shared in the stillness, between two people standing on the edge of truth and danger. A confession made without words. Evelyn was the first to pull away, but she didn't step back. She met his eyes steadier than he expected. "Don't let emotion cloud your judgment, Nathaniel." "Too late," he replied, his voice rough. The top floor of Crosstech was lined with thick, silvery gray carpet. Floor-to-ceiling glass reflected the last light of the day as it slipped between the spires of Manhattan's skyline. The air here was always cold, not because of the AC, but because of the way people moved. Quietly, calculatingly, as if every step had been measured in stock prices and billable hours. Inside the central executive office, Travis Hale stood still beside the window, a cup of cold coffee in his hand. His lips pressed into a tight line, his gaze cast down toward the city where the lights had begun to flicker on like quiet but defiant sparks. Like someone trying to reignite a truth he thought he had long buried. For days, someone had been probing his security systems, not a rookie, but someone who knew exactly where to look. And worse, they were getting close. He clenched his jaw. There was no doubt anymore who it was. Evelyn Monroe, the woman with eyes as still as stone, who had somehow stirred the very foundations of his cover without ever making a sound. Travis set the mug down and slowly turned to his computer. His fingers danced over the keyboard like a pianist revisiting a piece that had once fooled the world. He composed an email. One attachment, just a few lines. "Confidential data, detected unauthorized access. Sender, Evelyn Monroe. Intent, unknown, urgent." He hit send to Nathaniel Cross. Across the building, in the CEO's office. The room was bathed in the dim glow of a desk lamp and the amber wash of dusk bleeding through the glass. On the screen, a message appeared, attached, a voice recording heavily edited, and multiple images of Evelyn, captured more frequently in restricted areas than protocol allowed. Nathaniel's face cooled degree by degree as he read the lines. "She's accessed the system multiple times without authorization. The recording confirms she possesses sensitive data. She may be an internal threat." He didn't blink, but his heart for some reason skipped. She had never pleaded, never explained herself, never asked for trust, and that ironically was what made her linger in his thoughts. Nathaniel stood slowly, as if carrying a weight of suspicion, betrayal, and a faith he once thought immovable. He didn't call Evelyn, he called security. "I need verification on this recording," he said, his voice low and surgical. "Check the metadata, original encryption. If it's been edited, I want to know who sent it, and keep it classified." Later that evening, the rooftop where no cameras watched, Nathaniel found Evelyn. She was seated on a weathered wooden step, one of the only quiet corners in the building. No laptop, no servers. Just a worn notebook and a gaze fixed on the city below. "You're here to ask if I betrayed you?" she asked first. "No," he replied, stepping closer. "I'm here to ask if you still have the original recording from Gavin." Evelyn turned, her face calm, but her eyes held a storm just barely kept in check. Travis is trying to frame me as a spy? He sent doctored audio, security footage, enough to make you look guilty. Do you believe me? Her voice was soft as wind, but as heavy as the wall between them. Nathaniel met her eyes steady. Not because I'm naive, but because I know who has something to hide, and who keeps risking everything to uncover it. Evelyn said nothing. He sat beside her. Can you show me the original? She nodded. But if you hear it, you have to accept. Everything you thought was solid might have been built on rot. Then I'll dig again, he said, from the beginning. That night, back in the sub-level, just the two of them, they sat in silence as the original audio file played. Gavin's voice uncut, unfiltered. If I disappear, access the system using Travis's credentials. That's where he hid the contract with EncryptoNet. I tracked it last week. Nathaniel deserves to know, but if he's been compromised, then don't tell him anything. The room stayed quiet long after the audio ended. Evelyn rose, but Nathaniel reached for her hand. He was wrong, he said. She turned, brow furrowing slightly. Gavin, Nathaniel clarified, he was wrong to think I'd ever be complicit. Wrong to think I wouldn't have the guts to face the truth, even if it means standing against my best friend. Evelyn looked at him for a long time, and in that gaze there was no more defense, only something bare, human, and fragile. The truth of who someone is often only becomes visible when they are pushed to the very edge. The lower tech basement of Crosstech was disturbingly quiet at night. The silence was dense, as if sound itself had been drained from the space, leaving only the faint hum of cooling units, the crackle of static from deep within circuit boards, and the sterile flicker of blue LED strips embedded along the towering server racks. Evelyn stood before a thick steel door engraved with top-level clearance codes. She didn't blink. Beside her, Nathaniel was just as tense, though in a different way, like a man standing before the edge of what he thought was his own unshakable judgment. This way, she whispered, pointing to a recessed panel in the wall. The camera here lags by 2.8 seconds due to signal delay in the old light processor. If you move tight along the wall and stay in the dead zone under the light's edge, you'll vanish from the footage. Nathaniel frowned. You remember all that? Evelyn gave a faint smile. I drew the network maps for this place. I know every wire like I know my own palms. He said nothing. His breathing deepened as they slipped past the first door, entering the main server chamber, the heart of the entire infrastructure. Every log, every camera source, every internal contract Travis tried to erase lived here. The core server room was a technological cathedral nearly the size of a basketball court, filled wall to wall with dark towers of humming processors. Cold air drifted upward from beneath the raised floors, enough to raise goosebumps on most people. But Evelyn walked ahead without flinching, moving like a guide through a sacred maze. She stopped at a deeply embedded wall unit, a hardware archive that stored immutable physical logs. We have less than 10 minutes before the system flags an unverified third-layer access, she said evenly, though her eyes glinted with urgency. Nathaniel pulled a slim device pouch from his inner coat and handed it over. Evelyn connected the reader, entering a passcode built from emotional timestamps that only she would remember. The day Gavin was terminated, the hour he disappeared, their old apartment number. The screen blinked. Access granted. Root system detected. Nathaniel swallowed. This wasn't just firewall breaching. This was plunging a hand into Crosstech's very heart. Evelyn navigated through the backup logs. Each line revealed dust-layered truths. Then she found it. A raw security video from 3 months ago. Camera footage from the tech floor. Travis entering alone at midnight, using an external device to alter and erase system logs. We have it, she said, but it's not enough. We need proof of his offshore transactions to show money came in before the crash. Nathaniel nodded. I can access the financial core if you unlock the sync protocol. They worked in tandem, his fingers flying over finance logs, hers steady over legacy code. They moved like twin pistons of the same machine's CEO and fallen engineer, now indistinguishable. Just two people fighting for justice for someone forgotten. Suddenly, red warning lights flared across the ceiling. Internal system alert. Evelyn froze. Not the cameras, she murmured. Heat sensors. Someone else is here. Nathaniel scanned the interface. We've got less than 40 seconds before security gets down here. You should run, she said sharply. Number, you're not doing this alone. A beep echoed. A shadow appeared at the far end of the hall. Evelyn ripped the device free, yanking out the cable. Go! They sprinted from the chamber, alarms shrieking like church bells in the night. Auto-lock doors began sliding shut. Nathaniel pulled her through a side corridor. Evelyn nearly fell, shoulder slamming into a metal rack, her sleeve tearing, blood seeping into her uniform. This way, she gasped. They dove into a decommissioned server vault. The door slammed behind them. Nathaniel jammed the manual lock with a backup key card. They collapsed into silence, hearts pounding, lungs burning. The only light came from the still active device screen, data still decrypting. Evelyn slid to the floor, back against the wall, trembling slightly from the fresh gash on her arm. But she didn't cry, didn't flinch. She just closed her eyes for a breath, then opened them again to find Nathaniel watching her. We just broke corporate policy, cyber law, and possibly federal code, she murmured. Congratulations. You're now officially an accomplice. Nathaniel knelt beside her, eyes focused on the streaks of blood on her forearm. Wordlessly, he pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket and tied it around the wound. His touch was oddly tender, almost too soft for someone known for his precision in steel. Evelyn opened her mouth as if to say something, but stopped. Something stirred inside her, not fear, but the rare disarming sensation of being seen, of being touched, not just physically, but in the way that says, you don't have to prove yourself anymore. Nathaniel raised her chin gently. His thumb brushed her cheek, not to clean it, but to linger on the pulse beneath. She didn't pull away. Their breaths mingled, tinged with iron from blood, static from overheated circuits, and the human warmth under sweat-stained clothes. The room's darkness amplified every sense. She could feel her heart pounding behind her ears. He watched her throat move as she swallowed, slowly, deliberately. And then, like magnets, they met. The first kiss was soft, tentative, then wetter, deeper, hungrier, no hesitation. Nathaniel tilted his head, threading his fingers through her tangled hair. Evelyn rose to her knees, gripping his collar, pulling him closer. Their breaths broke between kisses, mouths opening wider, drawing each other in like lifelines in a drowning storm. The kiss grew hot, wet, desperate, but still held restraint. Passion humming beneath control. Desire laced with purpose. Their mouths finally parted, lips red, damp. Evelyn rested her forehead to his, whispering in the space between heartbeats, if I disappear by morning, at least I'll have had this. Once, in a place no one would have imagined, in the coldest room I've ever known. Something burned hotter than anything I've felt. Nathaniel cupped her cheek. His voice was hoarse. And if I let you disappear, then I don't deserve to have anything at all. Outside, voices called out again. The alarm still screamed. They rose to their feet, but now they held hands. Not because they had to run, but because they had chosen to stay together. Nathaniel's apartment overlooked the Hudson River, but that morning the water was a dull, slate gray, like it too was struggling to surface a truth long buried in its depths. Evelyn sat on the long bench under the window, her laptop wide open, an external hard drive tethered via a specialized data cable. File after heavy file scrolled across the screen lines of code, voice recordings, surveillance footage, financial receipts, login logs from auxiliary servers. Every trace pointed to the same name, Travis Hale. Nathaniel stood behind her, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hands braced against the backrest. His gaze drifted far beyond the screen, as if it were trying to detach from the present moment. From the speakers came Gavin's voice, low, steady, under pressure. If you're hearing this, it means I've probably been blamed. They want me silent, but I won't be. The security node logs show that Travis Hale copied our entire system map and sent it to Aegis Corp, Crosstech's biggest competitor. I don't know if he did it for money or vengeance, but I know I'll be stopped. Evelyn, if you're listening, don't trust anyone except your own heart. Evelyn swallowed hard. Gavin's voice carried the weight of foresight, as if he knew exactly what was coming for him. Nathaniel's grip tightened on the edge of the bench. He felt himself tremble, his body rebelling against the truth his mind had refused to see. "This is the proof," Evelyn said. Gavin archived all the payment logs, SHA hashes, IP addresses, device histories, and this quotation mark. She hit enter, a video loaded. Footage from 6 months ago. Travis entering the system security office at midnight, plugging a device into the source code port, using executive-level credentials. Then click. A file appeared, Gavin Monroe, suspicious activity. Travis selected, confirm, send to internal investigation. Timestamp. Exactly 20 minutes before Gavin's suspension. Everything lined up. Too perfectly. Evelyn turned toward Nathaniel. "He didn't just betray you. He betrayed justice. And my brother paid the price." Nathaniel stumbled back like he'd been struck. He said nothing. His body locked in place, but in his eyes was a man unraveling. Everything he'd once believed in his best friend, the company, his reputation was crumbling into a shell of carefully constructed lies. Evelyn's voice was quiet. "You know what's worse than this truth? It's knowing my brother knew no one would believe him and still chose to speak." Silence, cold, heavy. Then Nathaniel sank to the floor. His hands covered his face. His shoulders shuddered once, twice, and then tears. No dramatic sobs. Just a man, finally allowing himself to collapse under the weight of what he once swore he'd never be. Wrong, blind, betrayed. His voice was hoarse when it came. "Your brother. I helped push him into the dark." Evelyn didn't move, but her gaze softened. "You weren't the only one lied to," she said. "I believed in this system too. I believed in justice. But when it turned its back, I had only one choice: to go against it." Nathaniel looked up. His eyes were red. "I listened to Travis. I erased your file. I thought you were hiding to protect him. I thought you were manipulating everything." Evelyn stepped forward and sat across from him. "I get it, because I thought the same about you." A long beat passed. Nathaniel reached out his hand covering hers. "If I could choose again, I'd choose you, not him." Evelyn didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back either. She just said, slow and steady, "We don't get to redo. We only get to do right from now on." They sat there side by side in a luxury apartment filled with silence and cold light. Around them, a sea of data, every file of truth once buried under layers of denial and convenient doubt. And in that moment, what they restored was more than just Gavin's name. It was trust fragile, earned, and finally real. You're watching Soul Stories exclusive to our channel. If you're still with us, drop a comment we read and cherish them all. Subscribe to support more heartfelt, original stories. Thanks for being part of the Soul Stories family. Rain tapped steadily against the glass of Crosstech's top-floor boardroom. Not a storm, just a quiet, persistent drizzle. A mournful soundtrack to a morning no one wanted. Evelyn stood alone in the cavernous room, holding a small black hard drive close to her chest. From this height, she could see the city stretch out in every direction, but to her, the New York skyline looked like a gray smudge, thick, impenetrable, and cold. Just like the years she had survived. Years where her name, her career, her very identity had been erased with a single click. Inside the hard drive was everything. Gavin's final voice recording. System logs proving Travis Hale had sold proprietary data. Financial transfers, IP trails. And the last piece, video footage of Nathaniel 1 year ago, authorizing her erasure at Travis's request. The truth, but also the blade that could slice everything in two. Crosstech's reputation, the trust of its board. Even the fragile connection between two people who once thought they knew each other. She could release it, send it to the press, the FBI, watch the company fall, watch her brother's name rise from the ashes. But at what cost? Would she be delivering justice or destruction? Evelyn exhaled, her hands tightening until her nails pressed into her palms. Inside her was a storm. Justice or fallout? Truth or consequence? The door opened. Nathaniel stepped in. His suit was less than perfect, shirt wrinkled, tie askew. He looked at her and said nothing. He didn't beg, didn't explain. He simply stood there, a man stripped of power, standing before the only person who could decide the fate of everything he had built. "Have you decided?" he asked, voice raw. Evelyn stared at him for a long moment, then spoke slowly. "I thought I'd feel triumphant, holding this." She lifted the hard drive. "That I'd feel righteous, vindicated, but all I feel is tired." Nathaniel nodded. "I understand." She turned back toward the glass, voice lower now. "Who am I if no one recognizes me? A woman who once helped design this company's security. A sister who watched her brother disappear. Someone erased for trying to do the right thing. And the world, it doesn't care unless I scream loud enough." She stepped forward, set the hard drive on the polished table. "But if I scream, how many people lose their jobs? How many innocent employees get pulled down with Travis? Gavin's name will be cleared, yes, but this company will burn." Silence, then Nathaniel's voice, quiet but clear. "Then let me be the one to scream for you." She turned. "I don't want you to have to choose between justice and compassion. I already made the wrong choice. I believed him. I signed off on your erasure. I turned my back on Gavin. So this time, let me stand with you." She blinked. "You're saying?" "A private briefing. The board, the executive leadership, security heads. You'll speak. I'll confirm. And Travis will answer for everything." Evelyn studied him. There was no trace of the cold, clinical CEO she once feared. Only a man who had made a mistake and was choosing not to run from it. "Aren't you afraid of losing everything?" she asked softly. Nathaniel walked up, took her hand. "I used to be. But then I met a girl in a janitor's uniform, holding a USB stick, eyes sharp enough to cut through every lie I was living. She taught me something. You can't protect what's built on lies." Evelyn let out a shaky laugh. Something caught in her throat. "You're really quoting a B-movie monologue right now?" He shrugged. "If it works, who cares?" They smiled. And in the eye of this data storm, in the middle of hard truths, soft words, and second chances, they finally stood side by side. That afternoon, the boardroom filled. No journalists, no cameras, only suits, name badges, people who controlled the fate of a billion-dollar empire. Evelyn stepped forward. No microphone, no notes. And for the first time, she was seen. Not for her title, not for her past, but for the truth she carried. And that at last was enough. On the top floor of Crosstech, the internal shareholders meeting began like any other financial forecasts, market graphs, courteous nods. But no one in the room knew that in just 15 minutes, the empire they believed was built of steel would shake to its foundation. Mid-presentation, the lights dimmed. The main screen flickered and switched to video mode. No background music, no effects. Just a voice calm, familiar to some, and haunting to one. If you're hearing this recording, I may have already been framed. Gavin Monroe. The room froze. Faces shifted from confusion to shock, then slowly turned toward Travis Hale, whose knuckles went white around the armrests. The video continued. Data files, surveillance footage, system logs all pouring out like charges from a sealed indictment. And when the screen showed Travis plugging in an unauthorized device, submitting a fabricated report on Gavin's supposed misconduct, it was over. Travis jumped up, lunging toward the hard drive on the table like a drowning man reaching for driftwood. "This is fake! It's a setup!" he shouted, drenched in sweat. No one answered. Two security officers, pre-informed, prepared, entered from opposite sides of the room. Silent, methodical. One read out the arrest warrant in a firm, neutral tone. Travis resisted. It was pointless. As the cuffs clicked into place, his glare snapped to Nathaniel, venomous and bitter. But Nathaniel didn't flinch. He held the gaze not with anger, not with pity, but with finality. "Take him down to the secure archives," Nathaniel ordered, where he tried to bury the truth. As silence reclaimed the room, a spotlight shifted to the front. Nathaniel stepped up. No script, no notes, just the weight of truth in his chest. Today, Crosstech nearly collapsed, not from hackers or market threats, but from betrayal by someone we trusted most. He raised his eyes. And the one who saved the system wasn't a head of security, not a vice president, not a senior engineer. It was someone we erased, someone who had only a mop and a stolen identity. All eyes followed his hand as he gestured to the back of the room. Evelyn Monroe standing silently in a simple gray blouse, without title, without badge. His voice softened but remained steady. She's not the janitor. She's the reason this company still has a heart, and the reason I learned to trust again. One by one, people stood. No cue, no formality, just recognition. Then applause, tentative at first, then steady, then roaring against the glass walls of the tower. Still, Evelyn didn't move. Her eyes remained on Nathaniel. He extended a hand toward her. "Evelyn Monroe, please come forward." She stepped slowly across the polished floor. Her heart pounded like it wanted to arrive ahead of her. At the podium, the light was hot, harsh, but this time, she didn't flinch. "I used to live in a basement, literally, figuratively. I mopped floors beneath people who once called me nobody. I lost my name, my job, and my brother." A hush fell over the room. "But today I'm not here to take anything back. I don't need a title. I just want a chance to be seen for who I really am." She turned to Nathaniel. He looked at her not as a symbol, but with the kind of gaze that holds love and awe at once. "And if any of you are looking for a reason to trust again, start by listening to those you once thought had nothing to say." The applause rose again, but this time she heard it, heard the sound of light breaking through dark memories. In that moment, Evelyn Monroe was no longer a janitor. She was the one who had rebooted a system everyone thought had no heart left. Down below, the building settled into its usual rhythm. No sirens, no rush of leather shoes across glass tiles, only quiet. A new kind of quiet. But in Evelyn's heart, something still stirred. A chapter still unnamed, a name still missing. Gavin. She had cleared his name. She had exposed the truth. But no one knew what happened after he vanished. Until one evening, while rinsing her hands in the tech wing, her phone buzzed. An unknown message. "Riverside Park, third bench, west facing, sunset." No questions. She folded her jacket, stepped outside, heart thudding like it remembered something her mind couldn't voice. Riverside Park glowed golden. On the third bench, a man sat quietly, hair longer, eyes shadowed, but the gaze, it was him. "Gavin." She whispered his name like it had waited in her throat for years. He stood slowly, said nothing. She ran to him, wrapped her arms around his ribs like they were the only thing keeping her whole. Later, sitting side by side, Gavin finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, like it had clawed its way back from silence. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." She clutched his hand. "I thought you were dead." He gave a dry laugh, joyless. "Almost, a few times. When Travis found out I'd kept backup logs, he didn't warn me. He put a hit out." Her breath caught. He continued, each word heavier than the last. "They stripped my access, froze my accounts. I became no one. I slept in storage basements in the Bronx, ate leftovers, changed SIM cards every week. One night I jumped off a bridge to escape, cracked 2 ribs, no help, no names, just kept breathing. For one reason, to hold the evidence. For you." Her voice was a whisper. "How did you find me?" Gavin looked at her and smiled gently. "I didn't. Nathaniel did." Her heart stuttered. "What?" Gavin nodded. 3 weeks ago, he showed up near the place I was hiding. No security, no threats. Just a man who looked like he carried the weight of everything I lost. I thought I'd be arrested, but he just said, "Evelyn gave me a string of code. It opened my eyes. If you still have the truth, I'll take care of the rest." I didn't trust him, but he stayed. Left food, a clean laptop, and a promise. "Don't show yourself, but don't disappear." Tears fell silently down Evelyn's cheeks. She had hated Nathaniel once. Never imagined he'd be the one to return her heart. Gavin looked at her, eyes soft. "He protected me for 3 weeks. He rebuilt your system. He prepared everything. Quietly. Even I didn't know I was being shielded. He said he didn't want to tell you because if he was wrong again, he couldn't stand to hurt you twice. Evelyn wept. But this time, it wasn't grief. It was gratitude. She whispered as if to herself, "He once deleted me from the system, and now he brought you back." Gavin smiled. "Exactly. Don't forgive him yet. But if you saw how he looked at you, you'd know. Some men change, not by words, but by what they do when no one is watching." Far off under the trees, Nathaniel stood. He didn't come closer, just stood there silently witnessing. In his chest, something settled. Not redemption, but peace. For the first time in years, Evelyn wasn't alone, and neither was he. 1 year later, there was no longer an Evelyn Moore listed in the personnel system of Heart and Hale, the same database that once tagged her as Janitor number 1431. No one remembered she had once been a top-tier encryption specialist, erased overnight without a sound. But high above the skyline, in top-floor meetings of the world's most powerful tech corporations, a different name had begun to circulate. EM, the one who audited the conscience of the system. She had no office, no profile picture, no LinkedIn resume. She only appeared when needed, where algorithmic bias festered unnoticed, when code began quietly discarding people for not being the right fit, or wherever a job candidate was denied not because of skill, but because of an invisible label. Morning in Zurich, a skyscraper of glass and steel where an AI ran human resources, hiring, promoting, firing with precision and no remorse. In a sealed boardroom, the company's top shareholders were finalizing a contract with a silent, unseen consultant. A skeptical voice broke the silence, half doubtful, half intrigued. "So, what's her real name?" The room turned toward a man sitting quietly in the corner. No entourage, no tie, just a crisp blue shirt and a face once known from the cover of Forbes. Nathaniel Hale. He gave a small, lopsided smile, tapping one finger on the edge of the glass table. "The only person I've ever trusted, without knowing what the system calls her." Silence. In a world obsessed with tags, titles, and traceable identity, the answer fell like a jarring note in a perfectly coded song. On the other side of the world, in a modest room lined with warm wood panels, Evelyn sat cross-legged at a small desk. A laptop glowed in front of her. Beside it, a mug of ginger tea and a scratched silver USB. Her hair had grown, her eyes no longer dimmed with pain. There was no badge, no credential displayed on screen. Just her. A new message popped up. "Patch deployed. The system no longer filters out candidates based on region." "It's done, Evelyn." She smiled, a quiet, contented smile. No stage lights, no applause, no name etched on a gold plaque. Just the glow of city lights dancing across the ceiling above her. Nathaniel entered the room. He didn't say anything. Just placed a hand on her shoulder, light, steady, like a promise that didn't need words. Evelyn leaned into him, resting her head gently against his side, closed her eyes. They didn't need recognition. They didn't need titles. Because from now on, in a world ruled by code and data, there would always be room for someone who once mopped the floor and still saw the flaw no system could.